Please open the embroidery kit. First, take a look at the step-by-step guide picture inside the box. After scanning the QR code, please open the practice kit to learn the commonly used basic embroidery stitches. Then use the materials kit to start the official crafting. If you have any questions during the making process, you can contact us at any time. Open the embroidery kit. First is the QR code card. Then there are material kits for the 4 styles. This is the practice kit. These are the tools. And the embroidery hoop needed for embroidery. The stitch-in color guides of the 4 styles. Before starting, first take out our embroidery hoop. The embroidery hoop consists of an inner ring and an outer ring. First, separate the inner ring and the outer ring. Rotate the screw at the top. Pull apart, take out the inner ring. Take out our embroidery fabric. Place the embroidery fabric in the center of the inner ring. You can take a rough look first. Slightly adjust its position. Then take out our outer ring. Pull apart. Fit it over the inner ring. Like this. Then, slightly tighten the screw on top. Slightly secure our fabric. Then stretch the fabric surface tight. Be careful not to distort the pattern. If you are not satisfied, you can take it apart and re-stretch it. After the fabric is properly stretched, tighten the screw. The stretched embroidery fabric surface will make a bong 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 sound when tapped. Pressing down will have a noticeable rebound, indicating that our fabric surface is properly stretched. After we have placed the embroidery fabric, usually, one hand is used to support the embroidery hoop. Our fingers gently support the embroidery surface. Holding the needle with the other hand for embroidery operations is more convenient. In the video to provide everyone with a better demonstration, an embroidery hoop stand will be used. Open the practice kit. You can see here some commonly used stitches that will also be used later in the making process. You can practice the stitches first before off-seal crafting. This way you will get started faster and make the finished product more beautiful. When learning the basic stitches, you will use this stitch guide for beginners. It has detailed introductions of the stitch names and the number of strands of thread needed. Before making, you can refer to this guide to study. After learning the basic embroidery stitches, you will be able to create a cute little pattern like this. You can cut it out and place it on any small item you like. Now, let's create the cobweb rose embroidery. Before beginning, you can practice the stitches using the practice kit. Start by practicing the kit. Then proceed to embroider the final piece. Before starting, first take out our embroidery hoop. The embroidery hoop consists of an inner ring and an outer ring. First, separate the inner ring and the outer ring. Rotate the screw at the top. Pull apart, take out the inner ring. Take out our embroidery fabric. Place the embroidery fabric in the center of the inner ring. You can take a rough look first. Slightly adjust its position. Then take out our outer ring. Pull apart. Fit it over the inner ring. Like this. Then, slightly tighten the screw on top. Slightly secure our fabric. Then stretch the fabric surface tight. Be careful not to distort the pattern. If you are not satisfied, you can take it apart and re-stretch it. After the fabric is properly stretched, tighten the screw. The stretched embroidery fabric surface will make a bong 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 sound when tapped. Pressing down will have a noticeable rebound, indicating that our fabric surface is properly stretched. After we have placed the embroidery fabric, usually, one hand is used to support the embroidery hoop. Our fingers gently support the embroidery surface. Holding the needle with the other hand for embroidery operations is more convenient. In the video to provide everyone with a better demonstration, an embroidery hoop stand will be used. These are the two types of needles we commonly use. This needle is slightly longer and has a slightly larger eye. The other needle is slightly thinner and has a smaller eye. We usually use this thicker needle for threading for 2 6 strands of thread. This finer needle is generally used for threading 1 to 3 strands of thread. This is our thread holder. When you need to use the thread, take it off the thread holder. This is what it looks like when folded in half. Then we can take one thread at a time. This hand slightly holds it in place. This way, one thread is taken. Then neatly arrange the others and hang them back on our thread holder. This way, the threads won't get tangled. Like this. Separate the thread. Our embroidery thread consists of 6 single strands. We fold the embroidery thread in half before using it. like this. Cut it in the middle. Take out one thread. When separating the thread, pull out one strand at a time from the middle. Hold the end of the thread with this hand. Gently pull the strand out with the other hand. Like this, one strand is ready. If we want to take a second strand, do it the same way as before. First, separate one strand. Then hold the end. You can slightly hold it with your hand. Gently pull out the strand. Like this. Be careful not to be greedy. Pulling two strands at once can easily cause tangling and make it difficult to pull through. Common threaders are composed of a handle and wire. The method of use is the same. Here, we use this for demonstration. Press the wire of the threader through the position of our needle eye. Then hold our needle and threader to pass the embroidery thread through. This demonstration uses 5 strands of embroidery thread. Shorten the thread end. Pass it through like this. Hold the thread end and pull it forward. Then we hold the thread and needle. Pull the threader close to the needle eye. When holding the needle, be careful to slightly move it upwards, close to the needle eye. You can gently pinch the wire to hold it in place to prevent it from slipping out of the handle with too much force. Then pull the thread in this direction. You can also thread the needle directly. Wrap the thread around our needle eye. Then hold it in place with your hand. Pinch a small area. If it's too large, it won't pass through easily. Press it through like this, then use your hand to pull out the threaded part. How to tie a knot. After threading, we usually need to tie a knot at the end. The first method. Make a loop with the thread. Place the end of the thread over the longer thread. Then pass it through. Like this. Tighten. You can repeat once. Wrap a loop and pull our thread ends through the loop, tightening slowly. Tie the two knots together. This way, our knot will be larger and more secure. A second method. Hold down a little bit of the thread end. Press down with the longer thread. Twist forward with your thumb. Hold the intersection point. Tighten the loop and pull upwards. So, what about the third method? Pinch the thread like this. The thread end should be slightly shorter. This end is the thread we've threaded. Leave a slightly shorter section. About the length of one of our fingers is fine. Hold the needle like this. Leave the thread end slightly shorter. Press our needle on top and hold it. Wrap the longer thread around the needle to 2-3 times. Then pull out our needle. The knot is tied like this. The method for braiding and knotting is different for odd and even strands. For example, 3 strands. Thread our needle with the thread. Leave the ends slightly shorter. About the length of our finger is fine. Tie a knot at the other end. Like this, our 3-strand thread is threaded. 3 even-numbered strands. For example, for strand thread can be threaded by taking 2 strands through our needle. Then fold our thread in half. Align the ends of the thread and tie a knot. Like this, the knotted part also has 4 strands. So for 4-strand thread we have 2 methods. The first method is to leave one end long and one end short, like the 3-strand thread. The second method is to thread 2 strands in, then fold them in half. At the end, both sides have 4 strands. So you can see the same length. Using this method to thread will be a bit longer. If folded in half, the thread will be a bit shorter. If the thread is short, you'll need to change it more frequently. If you make a mistake in your embroidery, you can use our seam ripper or scissors. Gently lift and cut the embroidery thread. Be careful not to snag the fabric surface. Then remove it from the back. You can also use the longer end of our seam ripper. Insert it close to the fabric surface to cut the embroidery thread. Again, be careful not to snag the fabric surface. Here is the completed effect. Some sections require the use of ribbons, while the rest are created using embroidery. Refer to the stitching color guide. The guide specifies the required color codes. It also details the number of strands to use in the stitch techniques applied. Begin by embroidering the basket. It uses 6 strands into stands of number for thread. Using couching stitch. This section is quite unique. It requires 2 different needle sizes. Here, 1 thick needle and 1 fine needle are used. You can clearly see the size difference. When working on the couching stitch in this section, both thick and fine needles are used simultaneously. The thick needle should be threaded with 6 strands, while the fine needle requires 2 strands. Next, take out the thread organizer. Begin by unfolding the thread organizer. When first opened, the threads may be somewhat tangled. Use your fingers to gently smooth them out to prevent knots. As indicated in the guide, number for thread is used at this position. Therefore, take the number for thread from the thread organizer. Hold it firmly with your hand. Pull open. Then remove it from the thread organizer. Put the thread organizer aside for later use. Unfold this loop of thread. Take 1 piece from inside. Organize the remaining threads properly. After organizing, hang them back on the thread organizer. Pass through the hole. Pinch this loop of thread at this position. Tie it onto the thread organizer for later use. Take out the piece of thread just taken. Adjust the thread to a suitable length for convenient use. Because this thread is prone to knotting if used as a whole, use scissors to cut the thread in half. Cut it in half to divide into 2 pieces. Put the thread aside for later use. Check the guide. This area uses 6-strand embroidery thread and 2-strand embroidery thread. Then take out the thread just cut. This unseparated thread is a complete thread. A complete thread has 6 strands. We will not separate this piece. Put it aside. Next, pull out 2 strands needed. Hold the end of the thread with your hand. Gently twist the thread with your fingers. You will see that the thread has begun to separate. Pinch 1 strand with your fingers and pull it out. Be careful when pulling out the strands. Always take them 1 strand at a time. If you pull multiple strands simultaneously, knots are likely to form. Smooth out the lower part, then pull out another strand. After pulling it out, we have selected 2 strands. Place these 2 strands together. Next, thread the needle. Start by selecting a thicker needle and 6-strand embroidery thread for threading. Pick up the needle and needle threader. Pass the threader through the needle eye. Thread one end of the thread through the center of the threader. Leave a short tail. Pull the thread through. Remove the threader. This completes the threading process. Leave a small tail of thread outside the needle. The length of this tail should be approximately the length of your palm. Next, tie a knot at the longer thread tail. Wrap the thread once around your finger. Use your hand to tuck the thread end into the loop. Pull it tight. Tying to knots will ensure greater security. This completes the knot. The needle is now threaded. Next, thread the fine needle with 2-strand embroidery thread. First, smooth out the thread. Use the same method to pass the threader through the needle eye. Pass the thread through the needle threader and pull the thread through. Remove the threader. Leave a small tail outside. Then, tie a knot at the thread tail. If the thread tail is too long, you can trim it short with scissors. This is how you thread the needle. Let's review the guide. The technique used here is the couching stitch. Begin embroidering from the basket. First, take the thick needle threaded with 6-strand embroidery thread. Start from this position on the basket. This section represents the basket gathered towards the back. Therefore, this point marks the end. Bring up the needle here. Next, take the needle threaded with 2-strand embroidery thread. Begin couching stitch to embroider this section of the basket. Bring up the needle at any point along the upper line. Then lay the 6-strand thread along this line. Take the needle down on the opposite side of the line. Gently pull the 6-strand thread to straighten it. Simply couch it following the basket pattern shape. The principle is to use 2-strand embroidery thread to secure the 6-strand embroidery thread. Maintain a spacing of approximately 0.3 centimeters. Use 2-strand embroidery thread to fasten it securely. At this point, take up the needle threaded with 6-strand embroidery thread. Then take the needle down at this location. This section is secure. Next, bring the needle up at the following exposed area. Use the same technique to fix the thread into the desired shape. Be sure to secure the thread following the shape outlined on the fabric. Exercise extra care when acking the thread. Try to insert and exit the needle precisely at the positions printed on both sides of the fabric. For example, at the current tacking position, bring up the needle from this edge. Next, wrap the strands of embroidery thread around the 6-strand embroidery thread. Then take the needle down from the opposite side. This secures it firmly in place. At corners like this, secure with several stitches, approximately where the turn begins. For example, you can place a stitch at this point. You can place a stitch at this position. Secure the upper part of the basket thoroughly. Here, 2 lines are drawn, which will be embroidered later using black thread. Therefore, at this stage, you can embroider these 2 6-strand threads together. This stitch can be inserted at this position. These 2 threads are then embroidered together. You can see this area is covered. So use the needle threaded with 6-strand embroidery thread to take the needle down at this spot. Embroider the 6-strand embroidery thread. Then bring up the needle at the point. Continue working with the couching stitch. This area also curves, so you should make a stitch at the bend. If the thread is slightly raised like this, gently pull the thread and then smooth it out. This spot also has 2 threads, so you can fix them together here. Alternatively, you can wait and fix them together later using black thread. Regarding when to fix them, if they align exactly at this position, you can stitch them together. If they do not align, you can wait and embroider them together later with black thread. This area is covered again, so embroider using 6-strand embroidery thread. Bring the needle up from this side. This spot has a curve, so you can tack it down using thread to secure it. A broken section can be treated using the same method. After completing the embroidery, tie knots on the back to secure and cut the thread. Flip to the back, tie knots, wrap the thread once around and pass the needle through. You can also wrap the thread once around your finger. Then pass the thread through the loop. Adjust the loop and then tie the knot. Tying to knots provides better security. Finally, cut the thread. Do not leave the thread end too long in this area. Also, knot and cut the 6-strand thread. Cut off. Use a strand thread of the same color to embroider the lower part. That is, the legs and the base part. Use satin stitch to embroider. Bring up the needle from one end. Take the needle down at the corresponding place on the other end, and embroider the satin stitch vertically. Try to keep the stitches as neat as possible during embroidery. If it is too sparse in the middle, you can add another stitch in the middle. Repeat the above steps to fill this part with satin stitch. For uneven areas like this, you can embroider another stitch to cover it. However, please ensure not to embroider back and forth repeatedly over the same area. We will continue embroidering this leg. Working horizontally. If the thread has been pulled out, use a threader to reithread it. Once this side is completed, embroider the opposite side using the same technique. After finishing the embroidery, secure the thread with a knot and trim it on the back. Embroider the inner legs using the same method. Starting from the bottom, leave this horizontal stretcher unstitched for now. Continue embroidering this horizontal stretcher. After completing the embroidery, not uncut the thread. Next, embroider the black decorative section on the flower basket. You can see that number 8 thread is used in this area. This area requires embroidery using the fine needle. Take out the thread organizer and select number 8 thread. Align the thread ends. Fold the thread in half and cut. Take one piece. Now separate the thread. The guide indicates that this area uses 2 strand thread. Therefore, take 2 strands. Next, thread the needle. Pass the threader through the needle eye. Pass the thread through the center of the threader. Pull the thread through. Leave a small tail outside. Then knot the thread end. Cut off the excess thread end with scissors. This area uses straight stitch. You can find straight stitch on the practice kit. Before embroidering, practice using the kit first. Next, embroider the fixing points on the basket. First, stitch the upper section. The fixing point is located at the curved area, specifically where 2 lines meet. For the lower section, the position is here. For the upper section, the position is here. This entire row aligns at the same position, specifically at the 2 adjacent bulging areas. Use straight stitches to embroider the upper section. Bring the needle up from the backside of the fabric. Take 1 stitch forward, enclosing this area. Then take the needle down immediately beside it. Be careful not to pull the thread too tightly, as this may enlarge the needle hole or distort the fabric. The embroidery thread should pass through the hole with slight tension. The second stitch should exit slightly below the previous stitch. Take the needle down at the corresponding position. Embroider the entire row using the same method. When stitching, there can be a small gap between 2 stitches. Leaving a bit of the brown part exposed in the middle will look better. The upper part is all embroidered. Next, embroider the lower part. Similarly, make one stitch where these two parts meet. This position also needs one stitch. The outermost position also needs to be embroidered. This part is finished. Next, embroider the fixing points on the circular parts of the basket in the bottom. Connect the middle of each circle with this line. Bring up the needle from inside the circle. Take the needle down at the corresponding position at the bottom. Be careful not to stitch onto the leg. One stitch is enough. Like this, when working the couching stitch previously, it shifts slightly. You can make the needle exit just below the base. Then, use the needle to find an appropriate position and secure it by pulling the thread taut. Be careful not to stitch onto the lower leg. Next, begin embroidering the fixing points on the base. Focus on stitching mainly between each two points. Embroider the area where the leg meets the base. Start by making a stitch. This area requires the stitches placed closely together. Note the brown part underneath should not be visible here, which differs from the upper part. 2 closely spaced stitches here are sufficient. Begin embroidering the second stitch. Next, embroider these 2 points, which are the 2 legs joined together and intersect with this horizontal stretcher. Bring up the needle at this position. Take the needle down approximately 0.4 cm to the upper right. Pull a diagonal stitch like this. Then bring up the needle again at this position. Take the needle down slightly lower, approximately 0.2 cm apart. For the third stitch, bring up the needle at this corner above the position. Then pull diagonally to take the needle down, forming a cross like this. Repeat the same on the other side. Next, embroider the areas where these 2 legs are tied together. Embroider to stitches 0.3 cm above the legs. The stitching technique is the same as that used on the basket. You can leave a slight gap in the center. Begin by stitching 1 stitch. Then, stitch another stitch slightly above the first one. Repeat the same on the other side. After completing the stitching, knot and cut the thread. Next, proceed to embroider the leaves. Use the fishbone stitch for the leaves. If you are uncertain about the needle placement before stitching, draw a guideline. Use a pencil to connect the tip and base of the leaf with a straight line. Use this line as a guide to assist your stitching. Now, continue to embroider this leaf. Refer to the guide for the leaves section. The stitching method for the leaves and stems differs. This is a leaf. The guide specify using number 7 thread. Prepare the number 7 thread. Similarly, cut the thread in half. Take 1/2 and untwist it. From the thread, pull out 2 strands. Then, thread the needle. Tie a knot at the end. Trim off the excess thread. You can see that this area uses the fishbone stitch. The fishbone stitch can be practiced at this spot on the practice kit. Everyone is encouraged to use the practice kit before starting the final embroidery. Prepare to embroider using the fine needle. Use the fishbone stitch for the leaves. If you are unsure about the needle insertion point before stitching, you can draw a guideline, connecting the tip and base of the leaf with a pencil. Use this line as a guide to assist your stitching. Bring up the needle at the leaf tip. Take the needle down at 1/3 along the midline. Since the leaf is relatively small, take the needle down slightly lower. Bring up the needle just below the tip on the right contour line. Position it right next to the first thread line. Take the needle down just below the initial insertion point. Then bring up the needle from the left side. Return to take the needle down in the middle again. Alternate needle exits left and right and embroider from top to bottom. When pulling the thread downward, avoid pulling the thread too tightly. Avoid enlarging the needle hole or distorting the fabric surface. The thread should just pass through the hole. A slight tension is sufficient. Arrange thread lines as closely as possible. Do not leave gaps. If gaps appear, add an additional stitch. Embroider the other leaves using the same method. Note that there is a shape here that is not a leaf. Do not embroider this area for now. These sections need to be left empty. Complete the other leaves using the fishbone stitch technique. For these smaller leaves, simply pull a few stitches with the needle. There is no need to finish them entirely with fishbone stitch. Bring up the needle at the leaf tip. Take the needle down at the leaf base. Bring up the needle on the contour line immediately adjacent to it. Take the needle down and fill the area. Try to keep the stitches as close together as possible. If the thread slips off the needle, you can use a threader. Simply re-thread the needle and continue embroidering. Next, embroider the buds. The buds are embroidered using the long and short stitch. The long and short stitch can be found here. You can first practice the 3 basic long and short stitches on the practice kit. Below are advanced techniques for the long and short stitch. The long and short stitch technique above is sufficient for the buds. Begin embroidering from the bud below. Take number 6 thread with 2 strands. Use the long and short stitch to embroider. Before starting, you can first draw a guideline with a pencil. Divide the entire bud into 2 sections. After drawing the guideline, bring up the needle at the pointed tip at the bottom. When embroidering, alternate between long and short stitches. The lengths do not need to be uniform. You can adjust them flexibly according to the shape. Create a radial pattern. Avoid inserting and exiting the needle at the same point. Avoid enlarging the needle hole excessively. Set slightly. Embroider a radial pattern like this. You can lay the thread of the next row over the thread of the previous row. This will create a smoother transition. Begin embroidering the second row. Fill it in based on the foundation of the first row. You can embroider slightly further upward at this spot. Begin embroidering the second bud. If needed, you may still draw a guideline. When pulling the thread downward, be careful not to pull it too tightly, as this may enlarge the needle hole or distort the fabric underneath. The embroidery thread should just pass through the embroidery fabric. With a slight tension felt, use the same technique to complete embroidering the last one. Next, switch back to number 7 thread, cut it in half and pull out 2 strands. And begin embroidering the calyxes and stems. Start embroidering from the bottom bud. Bring the needle up from one side. Take the needle down at the top. Observe that this calyx has 3 sepals. You can embroider 2 stitches per sepal. Bring up the needle next to the exit point of the previous stitch. Pay attention to the needle insertion point. Avoid inserting the needle repeatedly in the same spot. Therefore, insert the second stitch slightly lower. Embroider the remaining stitches using the same method. Next, continue embroidering the stem upwards. Use outline stitch for the stem. Bring up the needle from the back side of the fabric. The exit point can slightly press down on the calyx. Control the thread by hand, guiding it to the left. Move up 1 stitch. The stitch length should be approximately 3/16 inch. Approximately 5 millimeters. Do not pull the thread tight. Bring up the needle from the center. Pull the thread taut. Then use your hand to guide the thread to the left. Proceed forward by 1 stitch. Bring up the needle at the end point of the previous stitch. Repeat the steps above. Take the needle down at the end point of the last stitch. First, raise out the stitch here to embroider the stem. Use the same technique to complete the other stems. For smaller buds, the sepal of the calyx can be embroidered with 1 stitch. shorter sections are also embroidered with one stitch. This will suffice. If the thread slips off the needle, you can use a threader to re-thread it. After completing the embroidery, knot to secure and cut the thread. Next, proceed to embroider the roses. Use the thick needle for stitching. Take out the thick needle. Take number 5 thread, cut it in half and thread the needle with one complete half piece. Begin by embroidering the smaller rose first. Bring the needle up from the back side of the fabric. Embroider the 3 drawn guidelines using straight stitches. After finishing, bring the needle up near the center, beside one of the framework lines. Begin wrapping the thread around. Use the needle end to thread through the framework lines. Thread through every other framework line. That is the first stitch, pass through at this position. Skip the next one, and pass through the following one. Be careful when holding the needle, to avoid pricking your hand. Thread the needle while using your hand to arrange the thread, weaving from the inside out in concentric circles. Gently pull the thread, keeping your hands slightly relaxed. When the embroidery reaches the desired size, take the needle down along the outer edge of the flower. Make some adjustments. Then knot and cut the thread at the back. Use the same method to embroider the larger flower. Similarly, begin by embroidering the framework lines with straight stitches. Next, randomly select a position near the framework, close to the center, to bring up the needle. Thread through every other framework line like this. Similarly, take the needle down along the flower's outer contour. Knot the thread and secure it on the backside. Next, take number 3 thread, cut it in half, and pull out the strands. Use chain stitch to embroider this oval frame. Bring the needle up from the back side of the fabric. Hold the thread with your left hand, and take the needle down into the same spot. Be careful not to pierce the thread. Do not pull the thread tight from a loop, and move forward 1 stitch. The stitch length is 3/16 of an inch, approximately 5 millimeters. Bring the needle up through the loop. Gently tighten the thread. For the second stitch, take the needle down at the point where it previously exited from a loop. Bring the needle up at the front. Continue stitching to complete this circle. Repeat the above steps continuously. The last stitch, bring up the needle slightly below the starting point. Primarily inside the loop. Pull the thread forward and take the needle down near the starting point. After completing the embroidery, secure the thread with a knot. Use number 3 thread with 2 strands. Fold the 2-strand thread in half and tie a knot. This creates a 4-strand thread. Begin embroidering this small circular frame. Use the outline stitch for this embroidery. Bring the needle up here. Hold the thread to the left with your hand. Make one stitch approximately 3/16 of an inch long, at 5 millimeters. Do not pull the thread tight when inserting the needle. Bring the needle up from the center. Pull the thread taut and continue stitching forward and complete the whole circle. Bring up the needle at the end of the previous stitch. Pull the thread tight. Repeat the above steps. For the last stitch, take the needle down at the midpoint at the very first stitch. After completing the embroidery, knot and break the thread. Next, embroider the square frame. Before stitching, use a pencil to draw guidelines. Draw guidelines at the 4 corners. We will embroider the 4 edges one by one. Begin with the upper section. Start from the center. Embroider the left side first, then embroider the right side. Bring up the needle from the back side. When pulling the thread downward, avoid pulling too tightly. This can enlarge the needle hole or distort the fabric. The embroidery thread should just pass through the hole. A slight tension is sufficient. Control the thread with your hand and gently pull it downward when securing. This helps prevent knotting. Ensure the thread lines are closely and neatly arranged. If the thread becomes twisted, you can straighten it using a needle. Needle insertion points along the edge should be aligned on a single line for a cleaner and more aesthetically pleasing result. If the gap in the center is too large, you can add a stitch in the middle to fill it. When stitching at this position, work at a slight angle. Adjust the overall direction of the thread by referencing the guideline. After completing this side, embroider the opposite side using the same technique. Use the same method to finish embroidering the remaining edges. If the thread slips off the needle, use a threader to re-thread it. Re-thread the needle with the thread. Next, embroider the bench. Begin embroidering from one side, using number 3 thread with 2 strands, and work with satin stitch. This rectangle is embroidered horizontally using satin stitch. First, embroider the circle below. This circle is embroidered vertically. Just fill it up. After finishing, use French knot stitch to embroider the small circle below. Bring up the needle from the back side of the fabric. Wrap the thread around the needle 3 times. Take the needle down slightly beside the needle exit point. Be careful not to take the needle down in the same spot. Otherwise, the thread will be pulled through. Gently guide the thread with your left hand to slightly tighten the loop on the needle, but do not tighten too much, or it will be difficult to pass through. Pull the thread tight. Embroider this small square. Embroider vertically using satin stitch. Use straight stitch to pull 2 stitches in this small area. The first and second stitches should have needle exits very close to each other. Pull 1 stitch slightly below. Then embroider this leg, also using straight stitch. Embroider 2 stitches. Use the same method to embroider the other side as well. Next, create this part. Using the same color to strand thread, embroider vertically with satin stitch. Now embroider the bar below. Also use number 3 thread with 2 strands. Embroider with outline stitch. Bring up the needle at the far left. Hold the thread upward with your hand. Take the needle down at approximately 3/16 of an inch, about 5 millimeters in front. Do not pull the thread completely. Bring up the needle from the middle part. Then continue stitching forward. Bring up the needle at the end position of the previous stitch. Pull the thread tight and repeat the operation. After finishing the embroidery, secure the thread with a knot and trim it on the back. Next, embroider this part. Similarly, cut number 3 thread in half to pull out 2 strands. Use satin stitch to embroider vertically. After finishing the embroidery, not unbreak the thread at the back. Now embroider the cushion part on the bench. Take number 2 thread, cut in half and take 2 strands. Use satin stitch to embroider. You can see there is a bend here. Bring up the needle at this bend. First embroider the left side, then the right side. After finishing the embroidery, not unbreak the thread. Next, embroider the window frame. Take number 1 thread and cut it in half, then take 2 strands. Then fold it and knot it. This makes 4 strands for embroidery. Bring up the needle at this position and use outline stitch to embroider the window frame. Pull the thread to the left by hand. Move forward 1 stitch. Stitch length is about 3/16 inch, approximately 5 millimeters. Do not pull the thread tight. Bring up the needle in the middle. Continue moving forward 1 stitch. Control the thread. Bring up the needle at the end of the previous stitch and repeat the above steps. At corners, reduce the stitch size appropriately. This will make the turns appear more natural. After completing the outer frame, use the same technique to embroider the inside frame. If the thread knots, use the needle to lift and straighten it. Knot and break the thread on the back. Next, use a thicker needle and thread it with a complete half piece of number 1 thread. Use outline stitch to embroider the section below the window. Neatly arrange the thread by hand. Knot and break the thread at the back. Next, make the curtains. First, take number 1 thread. Cut it in half and pull out one strand. After threading the needle, fold the thread in half and tie a knot at the end, creating 2 strands. Take out the ribbon and cut it in half. Take 1/2 and fold the ribbon in half. Take out the needle you just threaded. At the folded position, take the needle down approximately 1/8 of an inch, equivalent to 0.3 millimeters. Pass the needle through the folded ribbon. Then bring the needle up. Repeating this back and forth, insertion and exit. Thread the ribbon together. Position the knotted end facing downward. Pick out the embroidery hoop and locate the desired position on it. Then take the needle down. Gently pull the thread taut. Review the reserved curtain length once more. While bringing up the needle on the left, pass through both the embroidery fabric and the ribbon. Take the needle down into the embroidery fabric adjacent to the ribbon. The primary purpose of this stitch is to secure the ribbon. Ensure the ribbon and fabric are firmly fixed together. And neaten the shape in the center. Bring up the needle at the central position. Take the needle down again to secure it on top. Add another securing stitch on the left. Use your fingers to pinch the middle section of the ribbon together. Locate an appropriate position to gather the curtain. Bring up the needle at this position. Place the ribbon on top. Then take the needle down adjacent to the previous needle exit point. Use thread to tighten the ribbon. You can gently shape the ribbon with your hands to enhance its appearance. Embroider one more stitch to secure it. Tie a knot and break the thread at the back. Turn the fabric to the front and trim off the excess ribbon below. The length can be trimmed according to your personal preference. One side of the curtains is now completed. However, the lower part still curls up slightly. Use thread to secure it firmly. Ensure the stitch length is short. Otherwise, it will be very noticeable. Loosen it slightly. Now unbreak the thread at the back. Use the same method to finish the other side. Next, prepare to hem the edge of the embroidery fabric. Learn how to hem the fabric edge. Turn the embroidery fabric to the back side. Measure this distance here. Trim the other edges to approximately the same length. Use scissors to trim off the excess fabric. This edge should be approximately 5/8 of an inch wide. About 1.5 centimeters. First, trim the entire edge accordingly. Once all edges are trimmed, select any color of thread. Try to match the fabric color as closely as possible, or choose a light-colored thread for better result. Since this thread will be on the back side, it will not be visible. Before sewing to prevent the edges from fraying, you can carefully cinch the edges with a lighter. This reduces the chance of fraying. Alternatively, you can apply glue to the edges and wait for it to dry before sewing. Please note that due to international shipping restrictions, you should provide your own glue. Apply the glue to the edges. The edges are now dry. They feel slightly stiff to the touch, but will no longer fray. Next begins sewing. After selecting the strands of thread, thread them through the needle. Leave one end of the thread longer and the other shorter, with the shorter end approximately the length of a finger. Tie a knot at the tail of the longer end. Begin embroidering from the midpoint of the edge using running stitches. Sew a complete round around the embroidery hoop. The thread is nearly finished. We have embroidered from this position all the way to here. When the thread runs short, first pull this thread tight. The edge will naturally tuck inward. After tightening, sew 2 stitches at the spot. Secure it in place. Then tie a knot. Bring the thread to the back of the fabric and trim the thread end. Then read the needle and continue sewing from here. After threading the needle, first tie a knot at the thread end. Do not start sewing from this exact spot. Instead, begin slightly before it. You can hide the thread end on the back side. If you are concerned about the thread end pulling through the fabric when pulling tightly, you can sew a few extra stitches here. This will make it more secure. Then continue sewing forward. Continue sewing forward until you reach this position. This is the starting point. You are about to sew the last stitch. Bring the needle through to the front side. Tighten this half of the thread. First, tighten it like this. Knot it on the fabric surface. You can also knot it like this. Place the needle here. Then wrap the thread around the needle. Then pull it all the way down. Finally, pull the needle out. Bring the thread to the back and trim it. The edge of the embroidery fabric is neatly secured. Project completed.